Here's how to respond to those narrow-minded comments we get about ADHD and autism. Isn't ADHD and autism being diagnosed too much? It's actually being underdiagnosed. The stereotype for ADHD and autism is a young white boy, and anyone else who has not fit in with that category has gone missed for years and often spent their life undiagnosed, especially females and people of colour. There are two more reasons why ADHD and autism are getting diagnosed more often now, or three more reasons, sorry. First of all, we have more awareness, so we've got more knowledge now than we did even 10 years ago, and that makes recognising ADHD and autism more easy. It makes doctors are looking into it more, there are more studies on it, so yeah, of course it's going to be diagnosed more. The second reason is the world we live in is very unnatural now, and we're kind of in this society where we're meant to go. That is too much for anyone, but for neurodivergent people it really can bring out the traits of ADHD and autism and make them more obvious. The food is full of chemicals, the products we put on our body are full of chemicals, there's so much technology, and all of this is going to have an impact on our concentration, on our hormones in our body, because a lot of the things we eat and put on us affect our hormones, they affect the way we are, so therefore it's going to make ADHD and autism traits more obvious. The third reason is lockdown. During lockdown, people who were constantly on the go were forced to slow down and be with themselves, and therefore they started realising things about themselves that they never knew before. They started noticing autistic traits, ADHD traits, and that is the third reason why it's getting diagnosed more. Why do you need a label? Why does it bother you if someone who has been struggling for their whole life finds out why they've been struggling? Why does it bother you so much for someone to have a label if a lot of the time the label helps to empower that person to understand themselves and therefore be able to make changes in their life so they can cope better with their life? You can't be autistic or have ADHD. You seem so normal. You only see what my masking allows you to see. You have no idea how much I struggle in my head or in my body. If I wasn't autistic or had ADHD, then I wouldn't go to the trouble of getting a diagnosis. I've not done it for fun. It's because I genuinely want to understand myself and be able to move forward in a positive way. Why don't you just stop thinking about it? If it was that easy, don't you think I would have done that by now? My brain obviously doesn't work in the same way as yours does. Why do you make ADHD and autism your whole personality? Because it is literally my whole personality. It's what I live with day in, day out, and I have done for my whole life. It is literally me. Isn't everyone a bit ADHD? Or isn't everyone a bit autistic? No, they're not. The traits we experience are human traits, and yes, neurotypical people may procrastinate, they may struggle with certain things, but it's about the intensity and the frequency of those struggles. If you procrastinate sometimes, that is not on the same level as a neurodivergent person who procrastinates pretty much all day, every day, and then shames themselves so harshly to the point it affects their mental health. It's not the same. If you struggle with your emotions sometimes, that is not the same as getting completely dysregulated very often. If you don't like the sound of nails going down a chalkboard or a fork scraping on a plate because it goes through you, it is not the same as hearing sounds that make you feel sick or get a headache instantly. It is not the same as not being able to be around certain colour lights or flashing lights because they will make you feel ill. It is not the same as wanting to crawl out of your own skin because you've got greasy hands. It's not the same as all the sensory issues neurodivergent people experience to the point where it impacts their lives daily. It's just not the same. Here's the wild card. Before you disagree with me, make sure you hear it all the way through to understand where I'm coming from. When older generations say there was no ADHD or autism in my day, believe them. Here's why. Years ago, the world was a much more natural place. And yes, of course, there were people with ADHD and autism, but because there was, of course, there was pressures from, I'm not saying it was an easy life, so there was pressure, but it wasn't the same kind of everyday pressurised environment that it is now. There wasn't the technology, there wasn't artificial foods and artificial chemicals and everything. Everything was a lot more natural, and as a result of that, we were living more naturally. I obviously can't speak for people back then because I wasn't there, but I imagine due to the more natural environment, it was less overstimulating. And I'm not saying nobody ever got overstimulated with things. Also back then, while there was ADHD and autistic people, they will have been seen as quirky, and there was no or very little knowledge of neurodiversity back then. So when an older generation says there was no ADHD and autism in my day, that is their honest opinion, and to them that was very real. It doesn't make their opinion correct, because obviously there was ADHD and autism in those days, but it does make their perspective real and honest from their perspective. I genuinely believe that ADHD and autism wasn't as obvious back then due to living more naturally. I'm not saying that people didn't mask, of course they will have done, and I'm not saying people didn't struggle internally, because again, of course they will have done, but I think there were less things to trigger overstimulation back then. I'd love to hear what you think of these responses, and if there's any that I've missed, add them in the comments. If there's any ignorant comments you've got of someone about your ADHD or autism and I've not talked about it, I'd love to know what they said and how did you respond. Thank you so much for watching. If you found value in this video, please like and subscribe and check out my other videos. Bye.